Kentucky begins in daylight, rolling hills, quiet farms, sunlit forests, but its oldest secrets live far below the surface. Beneath this gentle landscape lies one of the largest cave networks on Earth, a subterranean world stretching for hundreds of miles. Mammoth Cave, with its endless passages, yawning chambers, and silent stone cathedrals, is only the beginning. Dark sinkholes plunge into the unknown. Underground rivers roar in pitch blackness. Torchlight flickers against limestone walls that have witnessed thousands of years slip past unnoticed. It is inside this vast underworld that the greatest mysteries of Kentucky take shape. For generations, explorers, miners, and archaeologists have stumbled upon impossible discoveries, artifacts and structures that defy every known timeline. Bones arranged in ceremonial patterns far older than tribal histories. Tunnels carved with precision tools no prehistoric culture is believed to have possessed. Chambers sealed with stonework resembling early temples. Strange symbols marking walls deep in zones where no human should have survived long enough to carve them. These anomalies whisper of cultures lost not only to history, but to memory itself. Mainstream archaeology offers cautious interpretations, early miners, misattributed burials, geological illusions. But the evidence refuses to stay silent. There are burials older than accepted settlement dates, tunnels that predate known native cultures by millennia, and underground structures that resemble nothing in the cultural record of the Southeast or Midwest. Even the tribes who lived here for centuries say the deepest caves were made by those who came before. What civilization worked by torchlight beneath Kentucky? Who carved temples far from the sun? Who built chambers no tribe now claims? As wind echoes through stalactite halls and ancient rivers murmur in the dark, the caves seem to ask their own question, one that grows colder the deeper you descend: who lived in these caverns, and why did they vanish without a trace? According to mainstream archaeology, Kentucky's human story unfolds in a straightforward sequence. The Paleo-Indians entered the region at the end of the Ice Age, followed by archaic hunter-gatherers who roamed the river valleys. Later came the Adena cultures, mound builders known for their elaborate burials and ritual earthworks. Eventually, the Mississippians rose to prominence, agricultural societies with complex chiefdoms, ceremonial plazas, and widespread trade networks. In this official narrative, caves played only minor roles, short-term shelters, ritual sites, or burial places used sporadically by prehistoric peoples. But the deeper archaeologists venture into Kentucky's cavern systems, the more this tidy timeline begins to fracture. Inside Mammoth Cave, Salt's Cave, and dozens of lesser-known passage networks, researchers have uncovered artifacts older than anything found on the surface. Some tools appear thousands of years older than the surrounding cultural layers suggest. In several chambers, carved wooden torches and plant fiber slippers were preserved in dry cave air, and radiocarbon tests placed them in eras where no known culture was supposed to be exploring such dangerous depths. Even more troubling are the burial chambers predating recognized cultures. Human remains discovered far below ground level, sealed behind stone walls or hidden in tight crevices, date to periods before the Adena, before the Archaic, and in some cases, before accepted habitation of the region altogether. These burials show careful placement, deliberate arrangements, and sometimes grave goods, yet no tribe claims them, and no cultural tradition matches them. Cave walls tell an even stranger story. In several deep sections, researchers identified multiple soot layers separated by thousands of years. This means humans were entering the same passages again and again across vast stretches of time, long before known cultural groups emerged, long after others disappeared. The caves hold a timeline of their own, and it refuses to match the surface world. Then there is the evidence of ancient mining, not colonial, not 19th century, but prehistoric. Pick-like marks appear on gypsum walls where no official mining activity should have existed. Some chambers bear scars from organized extraction, trenches, tool marks, and piles of processed mineral left behind by workers unknown to history. Tribes in the historic era spoke of the old miners, a people who vanished long before their ancestors arrived. All of these discoveries challenge the official archaeological framework, which expects gradual development and consistent cultural succession. Instead, the caves reveal chaotic, discontinuous occupation, waves of unknown peoples entering, disappearing, returning centuries later, and leaving behind artifacts that do not belong to any recognized tribe or cultural tradition. It is as if an entire chapter of Kentucky's prehistory took place underground, hidden from sunlight and erased from memory, a chapter written not by the Paleo-Indians, not by the Adena, not by the Mississippians, but by cultures science cannot identify. And the deeper the caves go, the stranger the story becomes. Deep within Kentucky's cave systems, miles beyond the reach of natural light, lie chambers so shocking that early explorers documented them only in personal journals, never in formal reports. These findings challenged the accepted timeline of human history in the region, frightened local authorities, and in several cases were quietly sealed off rather than studied. They are known today only through scattered notes, lost publications, and the whispers of spelunkers who claim to have seen what the official tours never reveal. The most disturbing of these discoveries emerged from Short Cave, where 19th-century explorers found mummified bodies preserved in perfect condition by the cave's dry, stable air. Unlike the well-known Native American burials of later eras, these mummies were wrapped in woven textiles with patterns no southeastern tribe is known to have produced. Some were laid upon reed mats, some wore necklaces carved from minerals not found in Kentucky. The explorers described their features as unusual, their burial style unlike any Adena or earlier tradition. Instead of building an investigation around the discovery, officials quietly removed the remains. Some vanished into museums, others into private hands. Short Cave was sealed soon after. Then came the strangest find of all, the Lost Canyon chambers inside Mammoth Cave's deeper system. Early spelunkers in the mid-1800s described a passage that opened into a series of connected rooms, each containing stone-cut platforms. These platforms were rectangular, flat-topped, and arranged in step sequences, almost like altars or benches. The walls around them bore tool marks, not the jagged, irregular edges of natural erosion, but the straight grooves and smoothed planes of deliberate shaping. Lost Canyon vanished from official maps after several expeditions, and access to its rumored location was quietly restricted. In multiple caves, including Salt's Cave and portions of Colossal Cave, explorers also uncovered ancient burnt stick torches, their ends charred and preserved in dry chambers sealed from the outside world. When dated, some torches appeared to be far older than any documented presence of native cultures in Kentucky. Their placement deep in the labyrinth suggested not accidental wandering, but organized expeditions. Whoever used them navigated miles of dangerous terrain long before such deep cave exploration was believed possible. Perhaps the most intriguing, and troubling, finds were the carved stones discovered in remote sections of Mammoth and Fisher Ridge Cave. These stones bore symbols unlike any known tribal art, angular lines, repeating geometric patterns, and shapes reminiscent of early proto-writing systems found in ancient Old World cultures. Some researchers speculated they might be tally marks or ritual symbols, others saw diagrams or maps. But without context, the meaning remains unknown. What unsettled early explorers most was not the artifacts themselves, but the architecture around them. In several chambers, the caves take on shapes too symmetrical to be natural, straight corridors smooth, nearly level floors, walls cut at sharp angles, domed rooms, with echo patterns suggesting intentional shaping. Geologists proposed explanations: erosion, water flow, seasonal freeze-thaw cycles. But many explorers quietly disagreed. The chambers looked engineered, as though shaped by ancient hands using techniques lost to time. These discoveries were made before modern archaeology, before professional excavations, before preservation laws. As a result, many artifacts disappeared, many chambers were sealed, and many reports were dismissed as exaggerations. Yet the physical descriptions persist across independent journals, travelogues, and explorers' letters. Too consistent to ignore. Too strange to fit any accepted timeline. Kentucky's caves hold secrets deeper than stone. Secrets someone, at some point, decided the public wasn't ready to know. Mammoth Cave is more than a cavern system, it is a world unto itself. Stretching through over 400 miles of mapped passages and likely hundreds more hidden in uncharted darkness, it is the largest cave network on Earth. For most tourists, Mammoth Cave is a natural wonder. But for researchers who dare to look deeper, it is something far stranger, a place where evidence of ancient engineering, mining, and ritual activity hints at a civilization that may have lived, worshipped, or worked underground long before Kentucky's known cultures existed. The most widely accepted discovery, and the one mainstream archaeology cannot ignore, is the presence of prehistoric mining operations dating back more than 3,000 years. Deep within the cave's interior, miners once scraped gypsum from the walls using torches, stone tools, and woven bags. Archaeologists have uncovered mining pits, carefully organized debris piles, and long, straight sequences of extraction marks that look shockingly methodical. These operations required planning, labor coordination, and knowledge of deep cave survival far beyond what the archaic or early woodland cultures are believed to have practiced. But the deeper explorers travel, the more anomalous the findings become. In dry chambers sealed from weather and time, researchers have found rope fragments, woven sandals, wooden torches, and cane baskets in astonishing states of preservation. Many of these objects date far earlier than the tribal groups known to inhabit the region. Their craftsmanship is exquisite, tightly woven fibers, symmetrical rope braiding, torch designs that maximize burn time. These discoveries suggest not a desperate survival expedition, but a culture accustomed to navigating and working in deep underground environments. Then come the structures that defy explanation. In certain remote sections, explorers have documented what appear to be stone altars, elevated platforms carved flat against the cave floor, often surrounded by charcoal-rich ritual pits. Some of these pits contain layered materials, ash, animal bone, and crushed minerals arranged in patterns too deliberate to be accidental. Mainstream scholars cautiously label these ritual deposits, but alternative researchers see something more: ceremonial architecture, the remnants of underground temples lit by flickering torchlight. Even more perplexing are the areas that resemble rooms and corridors rather than natural formations. These are passages with unervingly straight walls, level floors, and ceiling cuts that look almost engineered. Some have side chambers shaped with symmetry, nearly geometric in form, as though designed for habitation, storage, or ritual gatherings. In a few locations, vertical shafts rise into darkness like primitive ventilation systems, helping circulate airflow in ways that natural geology struggles to explain. Mainstream explanations attempt to frame these features as coincidences: ritual mining, ceremonial gatherings, unusual erosion patterns. But as more explorers document similar anomalies across multiple branches of the cave, the official narrative grows thinner. Alternative researchers propose a far bolder idea: Mammoth Cave may once have been a subterranean settlement or even a vast ceremonial complex, a megastructure carved and used by an unknown people long before recorded history. The scale of the cave system, the mining organization, the preserved artifacts, the structured chambers, and the ritual pits all point toward a society that operated underground with purpose and sophistication. And yet, for all we know, most of Mammoth Cave remains untouched. Enormous sections are unmapped. Others are sealed by authorities, for safety. Researchers have quietly admitted that some regions contain culturally sensitive sites, but no detailed reports have ever been released. What lies in the uncharted darkness? What secrets curl through passages no modern light has reached? If an ancient civilization did thrive here, its greatest chambers may still be waiting, silent and untouched, in the deeper black. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, Kentucky's caves produced discoveries so unsettling that many were quickly dismissed, misfiled, or simply vanished from public record. Among the most sensational were reports of unusually tall skeletons and red-haired mummified remains found deep within the cavern networks, remains that defied every expectation of the region's known prehistoric peoples. Early cave explorers, miners, and adventurers frequently wrote of encountering giant-sized bones in remote caverns. Newspaper articles from the era described skeletons measuring 7 to even 8 feet tall, often found in stone-lined niches or seated against cave walls as though placed deliberately. In several cases, the remains were said to have retained patches of reddish or auburn hair, preserved by the dry cave air. Some mummies reportedly wore woven coverings or ornaments not associated with Adena or later tribes. Anthropologists who examined a few of the finds offered conflicting descriptions. Some insisted the bones were simply large individuals, nothing more. Others quietly noted unusual proportions, elongated limbs, massive femurs, and skull shapes inconsistent with known Native American populations. A handful of academic reports from the early 1900s even referenced archaic traits or anomalous cranial measurements, though these observations rarely made it into mainstream publications. Many of the remains were shipped to museums, universities, or private collectors, and in numerous cases, their current whereabouts are unknown. What makes these discoveries even more intriguing is how closely they mirror indigenous legends. The Shawnee, Cherokee, and earlier regional tribes spoke of ancient peoples who lived underground, described as either moon-eyed, pale and sightless in the daylight, or as physically large, strong, and territorial. Some stories depict these beings as adversaries driven into caves long before the tribes settled the region, others describe them as an older, strange race that lived beneath the hills and walked only by torchlight. One recurring legend across multiple tribes speaks of a tall subterranean people who were eventually wiped out or sealed away after conflict with early native groups, a conflict so ancient that even the myths surrounding it have fractured over time. The similarities between these stories and the cave mummy reports are difficult to ignore. Mainstream science explains away the legends as metaphor and the giant remains as exaggeration or misinterpretation. Many academic institutions are wary of acknowledging oversized skeletons due to sensational claims made in fringe literature. Yet the repetition of these accounts, across local histories, early field notes, archived newspapers, and indigenous tradition, suggests something deeper than simple rumor. Some researchers propose that the red-haired mummies and tall skeletons might represent an unknown population, possibly related to early migrations that left few traces on the surface. Others believe these individuals belong to a ritual class or an isolated genetic lineage. More daring theories suggest the remains could be echoes of a much older people, survivors of an ancient cultural collapse who retreated into the cave systems for safety or secrecy. Whatever the truth, the tension surrounding these discoveries is unmistakable. The caves have revealed bodies that do not fit the expected timeline. The tribes remember beings who do not match known cultures. And the official record struggles to reconcile either. Kentucky's caves may hold the last remnants of a forgotten people, one whose existence threatens to rewrite not only regional prehistory, but perhaps the entire story of early North America. Deep beneath Kentucky's hills, far from daylight and often miles past where any prehistoric traveler should have ventured, cave walls are etched with symbols that defy easy explanation. Some resemble familiar tribal art, others are utterly alien, too geometric or too deliberate to be easily dismissed. Together, they form one of the most perplexing archaeological enigmas in the eastern United States, an underground script with no known authors. In Crump's Cave, explorers have documented handprints arranged in precise patterns rather than scattered randomly. Some are tiny, childlike, others are large, unnervingly so. Nearby, spirals carved into the limestone twist inward as if marking points of entry or cycles of time. A series of humanoid figures appear in alignment, each with elongated limbs and round, mask-like faces, nothing like the stylistic forms known from woodland or Mississippian art. Even more enigmatic are the markings found in the mud glyph region along the Tennessee-Kentucky border, where explorers stumbled upon vast panels filled with strange shapes, sunburst designs, geometric grids, ladder-like symbols, serpentine lines, and forms resembling early protoscript systems. Some glyphs match no southeastern tradition, yet echo distant Old World carvings, as if symbolic systems evolved separately but in strikingly similar ways. Mainstream archaeologists interpret these engravings as ritual art, shamanic imagery, clan identifiers, or mythic storytelling. They argue that early tribes entered caves for ceremonial purposes and left symbolic imprints of their spiritual world. In many cases, this explanation fits, but not everywhere. Because some symbols appear deep inside cave zones where no light reaches, far past safe oxygen pockets, in areas accessible only through narrow crawls or vertical drops. These locations are not places where ritual seekers would casually venture. They are places requiring knowledge of the cave system, preparation, and intent. Whoever carved there was not exploring, they were navigating. The geometric maps are the most troubling. In several caverns, clusters of squares, lines, and intersecting paths seem to mirror the layout of nearby tunnels. Some researchers privately speculate these could be underground maps, directional markers, or warnings for travelers moving through the darkness. A few symbols repeat across different cave systems, suggesting a shared language or tradition across vast subterranean distances. Sunburst carvings found miles inside Mammoth Cave raise even deeper questions. Why carve solar imagery where the sun will never reach? Ritual devotion? Or a coded message meant for initiates of an underground tradition? And then there are the hybrid glyphs, part human, part creature, part abstract. Some appear to depict beings with elongated eyes, mask-like heads, or horned silhouettes. Official reports label them mythic or ceremonial. But alternative researchers see something else entirely: records, depictions of encounters, or warnings left by a vanished culture that used the caves not as shrines, but as a world of their own. The deepest carvings feel intentional, purposeful, as though they were not meant for casual viewers, but for those who understood the underground realm intimately. A forgotten people, mapping their world in stone, speaking a language the surface cultures never learned. The farther the symbols stretch, the clearer the message becomes: the caves were not abandoned spaces. They were inhabited, navigated, and marked, by someone who lived where daylight could never reach. The deeper explorers go into Kentucky's caves, the stranger the artifacts become. Near the entrances, objects match what archaeologists expect: simple torches, woven sandals, basic stone tools. But far below, in chambers untouched for millennia, the discoveries shift into territory that cannot be explained by any known prehistoric culture of the Southeast. These are not merely unusual items, they are forbidden artifacts, objects that contradict the official timeline so completely that many were quietly archived, misplaced, or dismissed as out of context. Among the most controversial finds are copper tools discovered in deep cave passages. Hammered blades, flattened chisels, and rounded picks have been reported in locations where no metallurgical tradition should exist. The Adena used copper decoratively, but not in the functional, tool-like forms found in Mammoth and Salt's Cave. Dating on surrounding materials often places these objects thousands of years before metallurgy supposedly reached the region. Official explanations declare them intrusive, dropped by later explorers, yet they were found in sealed chambers with no historical access. Equally baffling are fragments of advanced textiles discovered preserved in dry cave pockets. These woven pieces show tight patterning, twill structures, and fiber manipulation far beyond the simple weaving known from regional archaic and woodland periods. Some resemble Old World weaving styles, others mimic Central American cave textiles. Their presence deep underground suggests people who not only ventured far into the caves, but carried with them skills and technology far exceeding what surface cultures possessed. Then there are the stone bowls, smooth, symmetrical, and carved with interior precision. Their shape is eerily similar to ceremonial bowls from Central American cave cultures, where underground rituals were common. A few Kentucky examples even display flattened bases and flared rims identical to Mesoamerican forms, yet there is no recognized link between the regions, no accepted route of cultural exchange, and no mention of such objects in southeastern contexts. One of the most puzzling categories is the fiber ropes. Explorers described braided cords far thicker and stronger than any known indigenous material. Some were found attached to pit openings or wedged into cracks, implying they had been used for controlled descent. Tests on surviving fragments showed tensile strength beyond what simple plant fiber should achieve, suggesting processing methods entirely unknown to the region's ancient peoples. But perhaps the most unsettling finds are the carved figurines. These are not wooden effigies or simple stone dolls typical of native southeastern art. Instead, explorers reported figures with elongated limbs, stylized faces, oversized eyes, or geometric body markings. A few resemble Central American cave offerings, others look unlike anything in the Western Hemisphere. Several figurines vanished after being removed from private caves. A few were displayed briefly by collectors before disappearing into estates or locked university basements. The pattern is unmistakable, and deeply troubling. The deeper the cave, the more advanced, and more anomalous, the artifacts become. It is as if the oldest levels of Kentucky's underworld belonged not to primitive cultures but to a people whose crafts, tools, and symbolic objects were far ahead of their time. Mainstream archaeology tries to push these artifacts back into the shadows, arguing contamination, misplacement, or error. But the artifacts tell a different story, of a lost technological tradition buried underground, hidden from daylight and erased from history. Someone long ago mastered this subterranean world. And they left behind tools that should not exist. As Kentucky's underground world reveals mummies, anomalous tools, symbols carved miles from daylight, and chambers that appear engineered rather than natural, one question becomes unavoidable: who were the people who once moved through these caverns with purpose, skill, and knowledge far beyond what official prehistory allows? No single theory explains every discovery, but each offers a glimpse into a civilization, or multiple civilizations, that may have lived, worked, or worshipped in these depths long before the Adena or the Mississippians rose on the surface. 1. A pre-Adena subterranean culture lost to catastrophe. One of the most grounded interpretations suggests that Kentucky's caves were home to a pre-Adena culture, older than any recognized group in the region. These people may have turned to the caves for protection during environmental chaos, megafloods, climate swings, or resource collapse. Over generations, they could have developed unique mining, weaving, and symbolic traditions suited to the dark. Supporting clues include burials predating known surface cultures, advanced textiles, and ropes found deep underground soot layers thousands of years apart, showing long-term occupation. If this theory is true, the cave civilization did not vanish peacefully. It may have died suddenly, swallowed by disaster, disease, or the collapse of underground resources. The caves became their refuge, and their tomb. 2. Mesoamerican migrants with advanced cave knowledge. Another theory proposes that groups from Mesoamerica, cultures already familiar with subterranean rituals and cave cosmology, traveled north along river systems and settled in Kentucky. Central American civilizations viewed caves as gateways to the underworld, places of ritual power and astronomical meaning. The evidence: stone bowls identical to Central American cave offerings, figurines with stylistic features resembling Mesoamerican deities, spirals, serpents, and geometric patterns matching Southern iconography. If migrants reached Kentucky millennia before recorded history, they might have blended with local peoples, or remained separate, maintaining their underground traditions until they eventually disappeared. 3. Red-haired maritime peoples from the ancient Atlantic. Some stories take the mystery even farther back, to ancient Atlantic cultures predating recorded seafaring. This theory connects red-haired cave mummies found in Kentucky. Giant skeleton reports, legends from Cherokee and Shawnee tribes describing moon-eyed people, and tall, pale underground dwellers. Proponents argue these people may have been remnants of an early, sea-traveling population from the North Atlantic. Similar red-haired mummies have been documented in Nevada's Lovelock Cave and South American coastal sites. If such a group existed, Kentucky's inland rivers would have served as natural highways into the continent, eventually leading them into the cave-rich limestone regions where they left behind their dead, and their secrets. 4. Ice Age survivors who retreated underground. Some researchers suggest that during the final convulsions of the Ice Age, with freezing temperatures, violent storms, and unpredictable climates, human groups may have retreated into caves as long-term refuges. Over generations, they adapted to the subterranean world, developing, advanced fiber technology, mapping systems carved into stone, deep cave mining techniques, ritual traditions centered on darkness and preservation. This would explain why many of the most advanced artifacts come from the deepest levels of the cave systems. These people lived in darkness until the world outside stabilized, but by then, they may have been too few to survive. 5. A priestly caste that used caves as cosmic and ritual centers across the ancient world. Caves served as portals between realms, places of initiation, astronomy, and elite ceremony. Some believe Kentucky's cave system was the center of a priestly underground tradition, possibly spanning thousands of years and multiple surface cultures. Clues include stone altars and ritual pits, sunburst and astronomical glyphs found deep underground, chambers shaped like sanctuaries, offerings placed in remote, dangerous passages. If true, the caves were not simply places to hide or mine, they were temples, used by a class of ritual specialists who guarded knowledge too sacred for open sky. For all the startling artifacts, unexplained burials, ancient mining networks, and engineered chambers hidden beneath Kentucky, the official narrative remains strangely silent. Unlike other archaeological mysteries that at least invite debate, Kentucky's cave anomalies sit behind layers of secrecy, denial, and bureaucratic barriers so thick that many researchers call them the most off-limits discoveries in the Southeast. Why? Because acknowledging them would require rewriting nearly every chapter of America's early prehistory. The first obstacle is federal protection. Many of Kentucky's caves fall under national park jurisdiction, where excavation is strictly prohibited without extraordinary justification. Even areas known to contain ancient artifacts are sealed off under blanket conservation policies. While these rules were created to preserve fragile environments, they also function as a wall of inaccessibility. Dozens of cave chambers with rumored findings cannot legally be studied, photographed, or even entered by independent researchers. Next comes archaeological reluctance. Official scholarship maintains that the Adena and later woodland cultures represent the earliest complex societies in the region. Admitting that advanced mining, weaving, or symbolic systems existed thousands of years earlier, and underground, would unravel decades of accepted timelines. Many academics fear that acknowledging anomalous discoveries could give traction to fringe theories, attracting sensationalism and jeopardizing institutional credibility. The result is intellectual paralysis. Better to ignore the impossible than to confront what it might mean. Compounding the problem are private landowners. Kentucky's geology is riddled with caves on farms, ranches, and backwoods estates. When property owners discover artifacts, unusual bones, carved stones, woven cloth, they often remove or hide them to avoid government involvement. Some caves are sealed intentionally, either out of fear of trespassers or concern that federal agencies might seize the land. Countless private cave systems remain inaccessible, their contents unknown. Even more troubling is the pattern of lost or destroyed artifacts. Copper tools reported in the 1800s vanished into private collections. Red-haired mummies described in early journals disappeared from museum lists. Stone figurines documented in field notes never made it into public archives. Sometimes items were discarded as contaminated. Other times they were misclassified, boxed, or quietly stored in university basements. Whether these losses were accidental or deliberate remains unclear, but their absence protects mainstream timelines from controversy. Meanwhile, institutions cling tightly to traditional models of prehistory. These models insist that North America's early cultures were small, simple, and isolated, not technologically advanced, not interconnected, and certainly not carving proto-writing systems in deep caves. The cave discoveries challenge all of this. They imply complexity where archaeology expects simplicity. They imply continuity where textbooks insist on cultural breaks. They imply knowledge that should not exist. And so a protective silence blankets Kentucky's caverns. Research proposals stall. Academic careers avoid the subject. Reports circulate quietly among independent explorers but never reach peer-reviewed journals. The caves remain officially unexplored, even as their walls continue whispering a different story. But the evidence grows harder to ignore with each sonar scan, each new cave opening, each rediscovered artifact in an attic or barn. Kentucky's underground world is not empty, it is overflowing with a past too old, too advanced, and too inconvenient for the existing narrative. Which leads to the question that looms over every sealed tunnel and forbidden chamber: what if rewriting America's ancient history begins beneath Kentucky? In Kentucky, history is not written in books or carved into monuments, it is whispered through miles of stone corridors where light has never reached. The vast underworld beneath the state remains a silent archive, its tunnels stretching beyond imagination, its chambers resting untouched since the last torch was extinguished thousands of years ago. Above ground, forests sway and rivers carve their paths, unaware that an older world sleeps beneath their roots. Yet the caves have not forgotten. Every drought exposes new openings. Every flood washes out sediment, revealing carved stones and ancient tools. Geological collapses sometimes unseal chambers untouched since a forgotten civilization sealed them. And new technologies, LiDAR scanning, ground-penetrating radar, 3D mapping, hint at levels of Mammoth Cave and its sister systems that remain entirely unexplored. Each discovery, no matter how small, adds another crack to the surface narrative, suggesting that Kentucky's underground world may hold entire settlements, shrines, burial vaults, and engineered passages waiting in the dark. The deeper researchers look, the clearer the pattern becomes: someone lived down there. Someone mined, carved, built, mapped, and worshipped in a realm of perpetual night. Their artifacts defy classification. Their symbols speak in a language no culture claims. Their bones, when found, are unlike those of any documented tribe. And their story, whatever it is, has been buried far longer than Kentucky has been on any map. Above ground, modern life moves on, unaware that every footstep may echo over chambers filled with the remnants of a civilization erased from memory. But below, the darkness preserves everything: the soot of ancient torches, woven sandals tucked behind a stone, a symbol carved into limestone as if its meaning were too important to lose. Kentucky's caves do not offer answers freely. They demand courage, patience, and a willingness to confront the unknown. But they hold the truth, a truth older than the Adena, older than the first tribes, older than the earliest footprints on Appalachian soil. And perhaps that truth is not lost at all. The truth of who lived beneath Kentucky may still lie in the darkness, waiting for the right explorer to uncover it.